Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I am back for another video. I can wait 1 second. I can hear the BRB. Hey y'all, how are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. There's just some weird feedback. But we are here today to talk about the events that transpired over the weekend. Look, all I can say is I am so incredibly relieved. I am so incredibly relieved. I think that there are millions of Democrats and Democratic leading voters who are incredibly relieved. I think that before yesterday, it felt like, I think Ezra Klein said it like this, it felt like we were slowly marching toward defeat, that we were watching a slow motion car crash. And today it feels like there's actually some hope with regard to keeping Donald Trump out of the White House. And it's certainly going to be an uphill climb, right? Like this new path that we're on is not going to be an easy one. And I don't think that it's a given, but certainly it feels like there is a path, whereas before there wasn't one. There wasn't one. You know, today has been a crazy day. It's always a crazy day when you go viral. But I will tell you one thing. Anyone who spent the last few weeks insisting that Biden should or could remain in this race does not get to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. That's just like where we're going to just start, right? Like, that's just like the baseline. So if you have spent the week since June 27th telling people that Joe Biden was fit to remain in this race, I'm not the one who's disconnected from reality. I am not the one who is unmoored from the political realities of the United States, but we'll have more on that at a later date. Okay, so let's discuss, oh my gosh, thank you. I'm trying to up my makeup. Let's discuss Joe Biden's withdrawal from the presidential race, why he had to withdraw. I'm gonna explain it once again. And finally, we are gonna talk about Kamala Harris's pathway to the nomination. At this point, it feels like an inevitability, but let's talk about why it feels like an inevitability. Your so-called problematic takes are always your bangers. Look, I'm a controversial lady. What can I say? What can I say? I'm not even trying. I just say the things that the Lord puts on my heart, and it gets people wound up in knots. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say, but I stand on my shit. All right, let's move on. On Sunday, that would be yesterday, President Joe Biden withdrew from the 2024 presidential race. Let's read an excerpt from his statement. He said, "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and to focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." And after that, he went on to endorse Kamala Harris. My very first decision as the party nominee in 2020 was to pick Kamala Harris as my vice president, and it has been the best decision I've made. Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this. And then soon after that, Kamala threw her hat in the ring. Here's an excerpt. "I am honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination. Over the past year, I have traveled across the country, talking with Americans about the clear choice in this momentous election, and that is what I will continue to do in the days and weeks ahead." Oh, everything has happened so fast. I'm getting distracted by my visage, in the monitor. Okay, that is exactly what needed to happen. I think it needed to happen a couple of weeks sooner, but Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer put the screws on Joe Biden while he has been recovering from COVID in Delaware at his beach house. And finally, he came to the conclusion that there was no pathway for him to win this race, and he decided to withdraw. If you are interested in hearing more about the backstory of this, this morning's episode of The Daily, which is the New York Times' podcast called Joe Drops Out or Joe Biden Drops Out, it has a really good timeline of exactly how all of this unfolded by White House reporter Peter Baker. Really good, really informative. Look, here's what I will say. I think Joe Biden has been a very good president. Of course, I have issues with the Gaza policy. I am not going to excuse the Gaza policy because the United States has effectively funded this war and supplied Israel with the huge bombs that have needlessly killed I won't say hundreds, tens of thousands of Palestinians, according to the official counts. I will say, I cannot imagine any other presidential administration doing much different. That's the thing, right? When we're dealing with United States foreign policy and a Trump administration would not only be doing much worse, Trump would not be talking tough to Benjamin Netanyahu the way that Joe Biden has, and his vice president, J.D. Vance, would not be going out and extending any kind of sympathies to the Palestinians, right? That does not mean, right, when Joe Biden said in that interview with Speedy, that was a mess. When he said in that interview with Speedy's, who's done more for the Palestinians than me? Joe? Okay, so no. What I am saying is that I imagine any other person who could be elected to the White House doing exactly what Biden did, and worse, and worse. That does not mean that we don't question the Gaza policy. It does not mean that we cannot call it what it is, which is a genocide. That does not mean that we cannot clearly say that Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right genocidal maniacs in the war cabinet, that they are not clearly seeking to cleanse the Palestinians from the West Bank. I am saying imperialism is, the presidency, And I don't really fault anybody, especially in Michigan, where there's a large number of Arab Americans, for saying we do not fuck with that. Though, interestingly enough, well, not Rashida Tlaib, but most of the squad, Ilhan Omar and AOC and Bernie Sanders, came out really forcefully in support of Joe Biden, which we should explore at a different date. But I would say that the domestic policy that Joe Biden has championed has been incredibly important, and I think under-discussed. Whenever I say this, people have a lot of pushback. There has been no more effective president in the last 50 years with regard to domestic policy. It's just not even a debate. So we can say Joe Biden, in his 4 years as America's dad, right? He swept in 2020. He found the center of the Democratic Party. He decided to champion broad, sweeping legislation that has created millions of jobs, that has transformed. He has been an enthusiastic supporter of labor. He has advocated and championed so many consumer protections. He has wiped out thousands of dollars of student loan debt, even though that is going to be caught up in the courts, and who knows if that's going to hold up or whatever. He did what he could, okay? He did a lot. He did what he could. It's time to move on. It just is what it is. And I am sure it was difficult for him to come to grips with the fact that after running for president for 45 years and finally winning the presidency, that he just got in there a little bit too late, and he doesn't have the capacity to serve 2 full terms. I'm sure that was really hard. I'm sure it's also probably hard for the people closest to him. And I'm not projecting this like Machiavellian thing onto Jill Biden. I'm not. I think Hunter Biden probably has some interests that are not exactly aligned with the rest of our interests. And he definitely should not be sitting in on important meetings with the President of the United States. He definitely should not be doing that. But ultimately, Joe Biden is a very ambitious, prideful man who got to the end of the rope and had a hard time letting go. But I'm really glad that he let go. Because now we're in it. Oh, I'm looking at the comments. Hi, guys. But there's nothing to be ashamed about. He's VP for 8 and president for 4. Look, he's 81. He was elected to the Senate when he was 29. Got there right after he turned 30 in 1972. You did. I don't think you could even dream of a better career in politics. I think that if he had stayed in this race, that would have been the mark of his legacy. And I'm glad that the message got through. And man, this last week of congressperson after congressperson, and we have cryptic messages from people close to Nancy Pelosi, cryptic messages from, we have Adam Schiff and we have Zoe Lofgren coming in, and they're close to Pelosi. And then we even had people connected with the Congressional Black Caucus coming out and saying Joe needed to resign, and people affiliated with the Congressional Hispanic it was just gonna get worse and worse. They were determined to humiliate this man into submission. And, you know, you got to do what you got to do. I mean, we had last week Congressman Seth Moulton from Massachusetts, somebody who has known Joe Biden for many years, who was close with Beau Biden, you know, saying that at the D-Day commemoration, he approached President Biden and President Biden didn't seem to know who he was. He wrote that in the Boston Globe. I mean, it was going to be story after story after story until, you know. But now we're here. Now we're here. Okay, so where are we right now? The Democratic National Convention will begin on August 19th. They will hold a virtual roll call vote to officially select the Democratic presidential nominee on August 7th. Thankfully, that was pushed back. And we are assuming now that it is going to be Kamala Harris. My gosh. Hi. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at your comments. You guys are being so nice in the comments. Okay, so it is in our best interest to assume that Kamala Harris is the presumptive nominee. Some people are calling for an open convention. No. Generally, it's believed that the people calling for an open convention are doing that in order to make Harris look stronger. Other people are putting their full weight behind Kamala Harris, including Nancy Pelosi today. Really, Harris is it. In order to become the official Democratic presidential nominee, she needs 1,986 delegates. And the last time I checked, which was this morning, she had over 500. Let's look at the Hill report. Okay, per DNC rules, a candidate must receive pledged support from 300 delegates to appear on the ballot at this convention. Harris has already begun. Harris has already begun reaching out to delegates to win their support. Tennessee was the first state to pledge all its eligible delegates to Harris, with South Carolina, North Carolina, New Hampshire, and Florida following shortly behind on Sunday. This is the delegate count from the Hill. They have 500 and something, but it's probably more by now. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why Joe Biden absolutely had to resign, why there was no other option. Okay, so put plainly, Joe Biden was going to tank the House and the Senate. I am going to explain exactly why he was going to do that and how he was going to do it, because I feel like the Riding with Biden people, nor the Congress people who came out against Joe Biden, have effectively explained this. So Joe Biden, over the past month, has basically become radioactive. And there are many Democrats across the country, particularly those in swing states, who are running really, really close races. And because there was this conversations around him about his physical fitness and his mental acuity, they were trying to stay as far away from him as possible. Like when Biden went to Wisconsin, right? Like Senator Tammy Baldwin didn't want to appear with him. They wanted to stay as far away from him as possible because they felt like he did not have the ability to effectively champion what he wanted to do for the next 4 years. He did not have the ability to make the case for why not only did we have a great last 4 years, but he has a effective vision for 2024 to 2028. And that's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable to have somebody at the top of the ticket that people feel standing next to him is going to make them lose their races. So let's take, for example, middle of the country senators, or like East Coast, like swing state senators, like a Jon Tester in Montana, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin. Now, Jon Tester literally came out last week and said he feels like Joe Biden needed to withdraw. Tammy Baldwin and Bob Casey have been a little cagier. Bob Casey has said things to the effect of Joe Biden is a great American. He's always put the country first, and I know he's going to put the country first again. But basically saying putting the country first means getting out of this race. And the Bob Casey example is really important here because Casey and Biden have a good, long-standing relationship. I think we should understand that these people who have, over the past few weeks, been calling for Biden to withdraw from this race are not like, I don't know that man. I've never met him. I felt like he needed to withdraw, but I don't know him. A lot of these people are people who know Joe Biden, who interact with him, who were very collegial with him when he was in the Senate, when he was vice president. Like, there is a longstanding, deep relationship that extends beyond electoral politics, and that is what has made the last week or two so messy. Because there was a standoff between Joe Biden's unwillingness to accept the numbers and the landscape for what it is, and all of these people who want to keep their jobs. So the last time Tester, Casey, and Baldwin were up for election was in 2018. In 2018, they had a whole bunch of tailwinds. So one of the tailwinds that they had was we were officially in the Trump era, and Trump had caused in 2018 enough chaos that by the time the midterm elections came around, voters were like, oh, actually, we need some checks, okay? We actually need some checks for the crazy person in the White House. And so people in lean Democratic districts or lean Democratic states, competitive states, they got that push. And we had the midterms, we had a desire for checks, and we had a willingness for people who had voted Trump in 2016 to potentially vote for a Democrat for Senate or for Congress in 2018 or 2020, whatever. Okay. And so Jon Tester, for example, won his 18th Senate race in Montana by 3.5 points. And in 2020, Trump won Montana by 16, almost 17 votes, or 17 points. And in 2016, he won Montana by 19, almost 20 points. But now, of course, Donald Trump is expected to win Montana again, and Tester is fighting for his life, fighting for his Senate seat. And generally, the senators and Congress people need a strong president at the top of the ticket to drag them up, to pull them up. And if you can't pull the people in really close races up, you at least need to be neutral. But the environment that we were in before Sunday was Joe Biden, an incredibly unpopular president and unpopular presidential candidate, was so underperforming these people in really close races that they were worried that he was going to drag them down. Now, I have had conversations about this with a couple of different people, you know, the liberal elite, people who work in and around politics, people who study politics. And they've told me a couple of different things. One person said that she was more inclined to believe the Senate numbers with regards to the Democrats than the Biden's polling numbers in the swing states because of the unlikelihood for split ticket voting, meaning people don't generally on the same ballot go Republican president, Democratic senator. So they were thinking, since these senators are so popular, they just don't want to express enthusiasm for Joe Biden. But when they got to the voting booth, they would actually end up voting Biden. But that's a gamble. Now, another person who works in politics said, actually, it would probably go the exact opposite way. Because in 2024, there are all of these very competitive races. And while the senators who are on the ballot in 2024 are going to be on the ballot with Trump, they were not on the ballot with Trump in 2018. And so now these vulnerable senators in really close races are battling the enthusiasm gap that Trump brings to every election. And they're battling the fact that they are, I'm sorry, saddled with the candidate who can't really do the hardcore kind of campaigning, the real glad handing and politicking that somebody has to do when they're coming from behind. Biden simply did not have the ability to help their cause. And so because Biden not only couldn't do the hardcore campaigning, but almost every time he appeared in public, he seemed to be confused. He didn't look the strongest. They are then in a position to explain why he often seems confused in interviews. They are tasked with defending his mental acuity and his physical fitness. And honestly, they're kind of being put in the position to say things that they probably don't think are true, but also that they know that most of the electorate doesn't believe. Like, even in Pennsylvania right now, there are attack ads running against Bob Casey that are like, what did Casey know about Joe Biden and when did he know it? And like, do I think that there's some grand conspiracy with all of the Democrats in Congress? No, but the attack ads were going to come. And so Biden's vulnerability made those Democrats in very close, very competitive races have to play defense all the time. They couldn't make an affirmative case for why they were the pick. They didn't have the space to say, this is why the Democratic Party is strong. This is why I believe in the presidential nominee. This is how I am going to work with the next president in order to enact Democratic policies. They couldn't do that. It will always come back around to what's going on with the top of the ticket. Thank you, Kim. Biden loyalists believing that Democratic elites were bullying him just to be cruel was always ludicrous. This was a tactical decision based on data coming from the ground level, nothing personal. And I'm sure for Biden, it felt personal because he knows these people. Before Joe Biden started, hiding from private interactions with Congress people, all of the reports say he loved hanging out at the Senate. He loved politicking. It's just unfortunately deteriorated over a span of several months to, a year and a half, a couple of years. So no, this is not about the Democratic elites, and it's not about the donors. The donors actually were using their power to compel the institutional Democratic Party, the establishment Democrat Party, to align with the will of most Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters. But that's another conversation. Okay. So we were at a position last week where 2/3 of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters said that the party needed another candidate. We were in a position last week where 30-something Congress people had come out to compel Joe Biden to withdraw because they wanted to keep their seats. And it still wasn't breaking through. And then, you know, you got to send in the big guns. Okay. And the thing that we should also keep in mind about Congress is, despite most people, there's a broad disapproval of Congress and, you know, the Senate and the House of Representatives, right? If you poll people about whether or not they think that the Senate is effective, that the House of Representatives is effectively doing their job, people will be like, no, they don't like it. But generally, people have a favorable view of their representative. So I had one liberal elite say, I believe the Senate poll numbers more than the Biden poll numbers because they said people don't split tickets. I had another liberal elite who works in politics say, no, what's going to happen is these people who have never been on the ballot with Trump before are going to suffer the huge enthusiasm for Donald Trump. And even if those Trump voters feel a personal affection or they generally have a favorable view of their senator or their congressperson, they're not going to go Trump for president, Bob Casey for Senate. They're going to go, let's just go red. Because split ticket voting in a hyper-partisan environment is much less common. But in this case, the out party, the Trumpers, have a big advantage. So this liberal elite said the Senate numbers are probably not capturing the public Senate poll numbers, are probably not capturing what a dire situation it is. Moreover, there are no public polling numbers on the House of Representatives. All of their polls are internal. So when we see all of these Congress people coming out, they're coming out because they're looking at their numbers, the stuff that they have commissioned, and they see it as a dire situation, and that their Republicans, who are relatively weaker candidates, are going to be pulled up by Donald Trump, and they're going to be held down by a very unpopular president and presidential candidate. And do we know if that 100% was going to, we don't know. We don't know if that was 100% going to happen. But are you willing to take the chance? I mean, are we really willing to take the chance of not only losing the presidency, but losing the Senate, which feels inevitable at this point anyway, and also losing the House? That just does not seem, it's just not a good bet. I just don't think it's a good bet to expect that the polling advantage that we see, you know, the way that Senate Democrats were outperforming Biden, you just cannot expect that to materialize into actual votes based on what has been conveyed to me. So that is how we get Nancy Pelosi saying, look, you know, I think I even read a report that said at one point, you know, Nancy Pelosi is on the phone with Biden and she directs Biden to get his pollster on the phone. And she is saying, we have to go over these numbers. We have to be honest about the numbers. Are you getting the real numbers? I mean, some real dark stuff, like So now we're in a position where the Senate and congressional Democrats get to play offense. Look, Kamala Harris has some electoral weaknesses. She does not bring a lot to the ticket geographically. She has been caricatured as a radical leftist by the right wing. You know, something that is really interesting to me in reading is that more Republicans feel like they have a good understanding of who Kamala Harris is than registered Democrats. And that's because Republicans have used the specter of Kamala Harris as a boogeyman for the past 4 years. They have used the, woke Kamala and radical Kamala and commie Kamala, right? They've utilized that in order to paint a picture. And so when you listen to Republicans who have such hardened negative views about Kamala, it's because certainly they're ingesting all of this stuff about her. And that, in conjunction with the fact that, again, based on the reporting, there's a great long-form profile of Kamala Harris in The Atlantic. That was great. There's a good one in the New York Times by Ested Herndon. That was great. When you read those profiles from last year, you also get the sense, look, maybe now is not the time for recriminations, but maybe it is. You get the sense that the Biden administration was intentionally trying to keep Kamala on the sidelines for all kinds of reasons. Maybe they didn't trust her to be an effective spokesperson for the administration, but maybe they didn't want a young, vibrant, or a younger, vibrant Kamala Harris to stand next to an elderly President Biden and people to immediately draw the comparison. In the profile in The Atlantic, Ron Klain, who used to be Biden's chief of staff, basically says that he regrets keeping Kamala Harris on the sidelines for so long. Because that is one of the reasons why she has so much ground to make up with Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters today. Now, this year, she's come out a lot stronger, and that presents a great opportunity for the people who don't want Joe Biden. I don't want Joe Biden or Donald Trump to be in the White House, I'm gonna be honest. But the fact that there is so much opportunity for Kamala Harris to introduce herself or reintroduce herself and establish an identity for Democrats who say, I just don't know a lot about her. That's great. We don't have to talk about the age stuff. We don't have to talk about the mental acuity stuff. We get to talk about who is Kamala Harris. Because the other thing is, and we will circle back around to this at some point in the future, the other thing is that before the last couple of months, those public statements from Kamala, the interviews, and I know people got really mad when I said the truth. The truth is that I went out of my way to look for long-form interviews with Kamala Harris, to read the profiles of Kamala Harris. There's an older one from The New Yorker, the newer ones, right, in the big mainstream publications. There are quotes in those profiles that are legitimately abysmal, shockingly bad, and nonsensical. Like, bad in a way that truly, like, that Ested Herndon, bro. I said, baby, there's Kamala. Come on now. There's no way you couldn't anticipate somebody asking you this question. Why don't you have an answer? Horrible. But more recently, especially in these last couple of months. Kamala, I don't know if she's undergone some kind of media training, but it's night and day. The first time I said, oh, we really might have something here, was her coming out at Essence Fest. When she came out to do her sit down at Essence Fest, and she had on the blue suit and the nude pump, I said, Kamala, now wait a minute, because I was real Kamala skeptical. I said, now wait a minute, Kamala. And she sat down and she was on stage and she was talking directly to the audience in a seated position. And she looked great and she sounded confident and everything that came out of her mouth was coherent. I said, now look, it's a different game. But people were still trying to hold on to the fantasy of Joe Biden trying to make it to 2028. But at that point, after I saw that, I said, oh, it's time to make a move. So I felt like she could do it for a minute. I felt like she could do it for a minute. Kamala came through. She was ride or die the last few weeks, and the Queen Bee. She clasped those hands, and divine will prevail. Okay. She locked the fuck in when she saw. She locked in when she saw Biden being forced out. But, look, she did. And there is reporting all over the place about the kind of, the careful kind of dance that Kamala Harris has had to do over the past few weeks. Because she could not, until yesterday, even hint or intimate that she wanted to be the president. One of the things that really stuck out to me about those long-form pieces on Kamala in the interviews was when people, and Ested Herndon has done such good work on this. Shout out to Ested for holding it down, because I know he getting dragged. Maybe if I am getting dragged, it's nothing compared to what Ested has been going through. But he has said again and again, he found it to be so perplexing that whenever he would try to broach the conversation about whether or not Kamala Harris was ready to step into the presidency, if something should happen to Joe Biden, that conversation was immediately shut down. That there was a complete and utter unwillingness to engage with the idea that the, at that point, 80-year-old president might not make it a year or 2 years or 4 years. And so since this conversation about Biden not being able to stay at the top of the ticket, she has remained completely loyal to Biden in all of the reporting. There's good stuff in the New York Times, I know. The crooked New York Times. The liberal media. There's some really interesting reporting in the New York Times about, her instructing anybody who works with her or around her, do not even talk about the potential of a Harris presidency, that she is vice president. Her role is to support the president. Anytime that she is going out on the stump, she is stumping as the vice president. That kind of diligence and discipline, but also being really effective and relatively compelling is why we're here. That's why we're here. She did what she had to do. But let's go back to Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy Pelosi, who is the real leader of the Democratic Party, okay? I know Joe Biden is the effective leader, you know what I mean? Like, the president is technically the leader of the party, but Nancy Pelosi, now look, I am not a Pelosi stan. I don't think that it is useful ever to stand any politicians. Please, politics is for power. It is not for superficial identity politics or the nebulous fetishization of direct representation or like cult of personality. I am not that about Nancy Pelosi. I have many critiques of Nancy Pelosi, but I will say that 83-year-old Nancy Pelosi, who is still very sharp and is still the shrewdest political operator of her generation, showed herself to be the real deal this week. The reports of Pelosi conferring with Obama and them trying to figure out a strategy of the best way to make this happen. I am anti-gerontocracy. I think it is crazy to have so many 80-something-year-olds in Congress, but I don't know. The 80-something-year-olds, Pelosi and Bernie Sanders, the way that they have been maneuvering, I'm like, oh, crap. Maybe I was wrong about gerontocracy. These people, for real, and how effectively we knew for certain that Pelosi was organizing things, right? Strategizing behind the scenes. The people, again, Adam Schiff and Zoe Lofgren coming out and calling for Biden to withdraw from this race. And then, of course, the official statements from Pelosi's office are always, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not involved in this at all. Bro. Baby, Nancy Pelosi is really tickling my girl boss instincts. I'm resisting. I am resisting because we have to resist the cult of personality. All I am saying is that if you're a liberal elite who reads the liberal news media and you have consumed all of these stories about how effective she has been, it's hard not to be. It's hard. It's hard to resist. But anyways, Nancy Pelosi had to break through the blue MAGA wall and say that she was not going to allow Biden and his egotism to bring down the party. And it has been really interesting over the past couple of years. Nancy won me over when we saw the footage from the January 6th riot. She handled it like a boss. Yeah. It's been really interesting to see the kind of rift build between Blue MAGA and Nancy Pelosi. I think what has really disoriented them about Pelosi deciding that she was going to align with the majority of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters who felt like the party needed a different candidate is generally Pelosi is always on the side of the most powerful person in the room. She is an establishment Democrat through and through. Like, she cares about winning. She cares about retaining power. She cares about fundraising. And usually that means she's gonna go with the people who are Democratic Party stands. there's a real divergence over the past few days between the Democratic Party stands and Pelosi, who, again, is the shrewdest and most compelling and cunning political actor of her generation, when she realized that the Democratic Party stands were going to lead the entire party into defeat. And those of us who are not Democratic Party stands or Pelosi stands have always understood that Pelosi was willing to throw anybody overboard who threatened the power of the party. That her responsibility as the first woman elected to be Speaker of the House of Representatives was to protect the party, to consolidate power, to maintain power. And that is bigger and more important than any individual actor, including the motherfucking president. Okay, Nancy Pelosi saw those illegal trading numbers going down and was like, wait, now hold on. Oh, man, but I'm going to say the tech stocks, the AI stocks, woo, that the NVIDIA is not doing what it used to do. Okay. What is it? The AMD is not doing what it used to do. Okay. Let's move on. So, when you hear these criticisms of the California Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, Zoe Lofgren, I actually think that is an acknowledgement of the fact that the California Democrats who are not in those super tight races, they have more ability to be a little bit messy, right? Like, be honest in ways that Democrats in the middle of the country or in really close races can't. The other thing about this, like, oh, the Democratic elites and the Democrats and it's all white people, is like, Hakeem Jeffries, who is the current Speaker of the House of Representatives, also went to Joe Biden to express his grave concerns. He also made a public statement about his misgivings about Joe Biden staying in this race, and he's Black. He's not Nancy Pelosi. We have reached a point where people are legitimately saying, oh, man, I saw some real bad clips from the mainstream media a couple days ago. People saying, Nancy, this is political malpractice, I saw someone say. Nancy Pelosi is out of her depth. Nancy Pelosi doesn't know what she is doing. She is so Nancy Pelosi? Blue MAGA. This is a really, really embarrassing time for Blue MAGA. I hope that y'all have the opportunity to rest and recover, rest and recuperate, because it's getting bad. It's getting bad over there. What this entire thing has exposed, it's not just that Joe Biden had a bad 90 minutes, which is the completely disingenuous. I mean, to put it generously, I would say people who say that this conversation about Biden is about 90 minutes, they're being disingenuous. If I really wanted to be honest about my thoughts, I would say they are outright saying half-truths and mistruths to the public in order to steelman their position. I think so many people in Congress and so many establishment Democrats have said things to the public that are straight up lies and things that they knew were lies. Oh, don't make me go off on this. Now, I like Bernie Sanders. But we had the Bernie Sanders op-ed endorsing Joe Biden in the liberal elite's favorite newspaper, the New York Times. I say that because I read the New York Times literally every single day, right? Literally every single day, the Times and the New Yorker. Him writing that op-ed, endorsing Biden in the New York Times, and then doing the follow-up Q&A in the New Yorker, and being unwilling to address the issue of whether or not he thinks Biden has the capacity to not only campaign, but make it to the next 4 years. I understand the strategy, but you guys, I don't know if the Democratic Party establishment and the Democratic Congress people and the Riding with Biden people, I don't know if they fully comprehend how much damage that the lies and half-truths and mistruths have done to not only the party, but generally people's feelings about democracy and democratic institutions. I have been so dismayed by people's willingness to do things that undermine democracy in the long term in order to get what they feel like is a positive outcome in the short term. The idea of rallying people by saying half-truths and mistruths to get behind Biden when you know, because we have a mountain of reporting. We have all of these people who interact with Biden regularly saying, it's bad, it's getting bad. It's getting bad and it's going to get worse. To say we just have to push him anyway. And okay, he doesn't have the capacity, but he'll have smart people around him. That is fundamentally anti-democratic. How are we saying that we're protecting democracy when you are literally endorsing things that undermine people's trust and faith in the effectiveness of democracy? Why would you do that? In a context where we already see people more and more willing to say that democracy might not be the best form of government. People who live in the United States, people who live in democracies. People are already feeling like liberal democracy is failing them. And if you understand that, why would you say things that don't make any sense? Especially not at this time when you know there's an alternative. What has really frustrated me is the number of people who are willing to disgrace themselves and undermine faith, trust, belief in democracy and democratic norms in order to push support for the president who has promised them things. And so with regard to the Bernie Sanders thing, there was reporting in the Washington Post about Biden meeting with AOC and Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders, and this is why I'm saying maybe gerontocracy is not so bad, telling Biden that he would endorse him and back him as long as Biden agreed to incorporate Sanders's policy ideas into his stump speeches. So a week ago when I did my live stream, I said, oh, that rally in Detroit where Joe Biden outlined his vision for the next 100 days? Oh, that plan for the first 100 days was really good. Like, oh, okay, look, if we're going to be stuck with Biden, at least he says he's committing to eliminating medical debt and, you know, all these other, right? Like the pro-labor act or whatever. Like, it turns out that Bernie Sanders in, you know, the private meetings with Joe Biden had said, look, I'll get behind you, but you have to make sure that you incorporate these pro-consumer, you know, pro-working class policies into your stump speech. Now, am I mad at that? No, I'm not particularly mad at that. Like, look, if we were going to be stuck with Biden, right, at least get some of the progressive policies, right? Like, politics is about bartering. It's about the horse trading. It's about the deal making. But you're doing that deal making and then coming out in public and saying things that people are like, this is bullshit. And dude, with regard to the Democratic primary thing, y'all know that that is a bullshit claim. Now I'm just talking because we're just going to throw the outline away. Let me just start talking. With regard to the claim about 14 million votes in the primary, I believe that this is reporting from the Wall Street Journal about how the campaign was intimidating people overtly or covertly out of primarying Biden, out of challenging him. That they were overtly or covertly saying, the president is running again. You don't want to challenge the president. Your career is going to be harmed. And you know whose career was harmed because he decided to challenge the president? Dean Phillips. So Dean Phillips decided to ignore the intimidation. He decided to primary Joe Biden. Joe Biden didn't show up for any of the debates. Of course, he didn't. But the DNC funded a primary challenger for Dean Phillips. That was the threat. That because Phillips had said, hey, I don't think that this person is going to make it 4 more years. Like, we need a primary challenger. And he did it over the party's wishes. The party then said, oh, we're primarying people? They were going to fund a primary challenge for him. And instead of going through with that, he just said, oh, I'm not going to run for re-election anymore. That's anti-democratic. Oh, you want to talk about disenfranchising people? You want to talk about democracy? Let's talk about how the Biden White House and the Democratic National Committee conspired to make sure that we would never have to see Joe Biden participate in a debate before June 27th. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So I am glad we are where we are. This ultimately comes down to the Biden camps and the Democratic National Committee, their inability to manage a crisis. They have consistently failed in containing the crisis and messaging around the crisis. The other really horrific thing that we have seen unfold over the past couple of weeks is the scapegoating of the media, when you know what institution is more powerful than the media? The presidency. man, I guess it's recrimination time. But because I'm not really on Twitter anymore, I'm not really a social media girl anymore, but people will send me stuff. I have seen tweets where people said, CNN is worse than Fox News. The New York Times is worse than Fox News. You guys, come on. Does that make sense? Man, partisan politics in the United States is so broken. I think hyperpartisanship is a reflection of something really sad and dark in American culture. And for years, we were able to delude ourselves into thinking that that brokenness was particular to the right. Like, we just thought the people whose brains are broken in that specific way, they vote Trump. They go for Marine Le Pen. They vote for Giorgia Meloni. They vote for Viktor Orban or Bolsonaro. But it turns out that that's not true. That Joe Biden could be at a rally in Detroit and point to the media and say, "This is your fault." And everybody cheers. And nobody says, hey, wait, you're the president. Nobody says, wait a second. Hey, you're the president. You're not like a random person that they've decided to report on. You have the most powerful platform in the world. Instead, people say, New York Times, less than Fox News or whatever. Sorry, I get my greater than and less than signs like mixed up. Like the greater than, like the opening goes towards like the bigger one. Okay, you know. You guys, no. Right? The idea that the quote unquote progressives, the liberal party does not understand that a weak media is horrible for democracy. You can't want a strong democracy and want a weak media, you guys. That does not mean that there are not legitimate criticisms of quote unquote corporate media, as Bernie Sanders would say. Now, it's funny in the New Yorker when Bernie Sanders talks about corporate media and he's giving a Q&A to Condé Nast owned the New Yorker, and he just published an op-ed in the New York Times. Now that's funny to me, okay? That's funny to me. But if you want to live in a robust democracy, we cannot have a government or governmental institutions that are not rigorously and regularly checked by a well-funded media. Come on, it's Democracy 101. I cannot tell you how horrified I have been. You know how easily Biden could have, if Biden was upset about the reporting in the New Yorker or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or ProPublica or right? He could have giving a news conference every single day. People's literal job is to follow him around every single day. He could have done that. He didn't. He didn't because he couldn't. And that's not the media's fault. U.S. news is too emotionally driven, not enough facts, research, or follow-up. You guys. This, as a person who reads media, like reads, okay? If you don't find it, it's because you're not looking for it. Because it's there. The reporting about everything that's been happening in politics is crazy. Deep. Like, layered, complex, intricate, detailed. It's there. But as I mentioned last week, I'm one of 30,000 people in the United States who reads the newspaper every day. But that's still important. And you guys, bro, I don't even want to, but the consequences of political actors conveniently and cynically eroding people's faith in the media is literally deadly. Right? Eroding people's faith in these institutions that we trust to disseminate information. It is fact-checked. There is follow-up. There are modes and mechanisms of accountability. Does that mean that they get it right all the time? No, of course not. When they get it wrong, we call them out on it, but we don't say media is useless, media is stupid, media serves no place in a democracy. What are you saying? And if you feel like the problem is that the power of mainstream media or whatever is too consolidated, it's too centralized in the hands of these 5 big newspapers, then you say, what do we need to do to create a system that robustly funds smaller publications, different kinds of publications? But it's not, media is dumb. Look, there's a reason why at the height of COVID, Republicans were much more likely to die of COVID, much less likely to be vaccinated, because Donald Trump and Republicans were systematically and intentionally eroding people's faith in journalistic institutions, in experts, in expertise. This is not just about who is going to win an election. This is literally about who is going to live or die. That's why I've been so pissed off. I've been so pissed off at the institutional Democratic Party. I've been so pissed off at the Biden administration because the effects of this are going to extend way beyond 2024, way beyond 2028. You have given people license to say, here are numbers. I don't believe those numbers. What's the next set of numbers? What's the next set of numbers? I might believe those. Dude, look, we're a civilization in decline. I don't know. You can find better media outlets than the New York Times is all I am saying. I have said over and over again that it's not just, I don't just read the New York Times. I read the New Yorker, I read the Times, I read the Journal, I read the Washington Post. If we want to go smaller, ProPublica, love essential reporting at ProPublica. If I'm in my progressive, far leftist bag, we'll go to The Intercept. There are independent journalists on Substack and YouTube that I subscribe to. That's all media. Bro, I just think it's bad. But anyways, we can go back to the actual topic of what you read the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. Here's the other thing. You cannot just engage with the people who tell you what you want to hear. What is going on? What's going on? Yes, I do read those weirdo, super conservative op-eds in the Journal and say, what the fuck is going on with the Republicans? But that is also important. Baby, I read one op-ed in the Journal the other day that said, who cares about January 6th? I said, oh, the Republicans are gone. It was, who cares about January 6th? What are you saying? I said, oh, democracy is done. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, democracy now, for sure. But come on. That's why one thing about me is I'm going to stand on my shit. If I believe it, I believe it. Sorry. I'm sorry if that upsets you. But I didn't decide to do this so I could just say things that everybody likes all the time. And we do need more people who are willing to do that. But that means that we do have to invest, financially in journalists and reporters and media outlets that we find valuable. And we can't give in to the whims of actors who feel like their power is challenged. Anyways, I was afraid for you the way they were witch hunting for you on Twitter and TikTok. Girl, I've been through worse. And as I said before, if a week ago you were making impassioned defenses of why we were crazy for saying Joe Biden could not keep running in this election, if you were trying to gaslight us into thinking that we were the crazy people for saying, no, it wasn't one 90-minute debate. If you were trying to gaslight the majority of Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters who feel like the party needed a different nominee by saying stuff like, oh, don't disenfranchise the 14 million primary voters, you honestly can't say shit to me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. If you decided to go with the Biden administration's ridiculous line that the effort to get a new nominee for the top of the ticket was something that was created by donors and liberal elites, you really can't say shit to me. I'm so sorry. Thank you. The best thing about being self-employed and living a comfortable life where integrity is paramount is the Democratic shills can drag me up and down, left and right all day, and it doesn't affect me one bit. Because you don't pay my rent, and you're not going to beat me up. You're not going to fuck my man, you don't pay my rent, and you're not going to beat me up. So what are we talking about? But look, sorry, let's be serious. I do think that there is a real conversation to be had about Kamala Harris's legislative record and her record as a prosecutor. And I want to have that conversation. I'm just not going to go back and forth with a man yelling in his car. I'm just not going to do that. Okay. Something that always concerned me was the fact that the official Joe Biden campaign website never had the platform listed, not in a conspiratorial way, but in a clear, neglectful, and incompetent way. Right. Yeah. Oh, God, I'm sorry. So anyway, I was supposed to get back to Kamala. This is just me like going off. I'm sorry. I don't clip me saying that that the Democratic shills aren't gonna fuck my man and they're not gonna beat me up. Don't do that. I mean, you can if you want to, but like, I'm really not trying to like beef with people. I am saying that there is something really, really concerning, deeply concerning going on when people are willing to parrot talking points from a political campaign that are clearly not true. And one thing that I really appreciated about AOC, the live stream that got posted and then eventually got deleted, I assume it got deleted because she got word that Biden was gonna drop out soon or whatever. What I appreciated about her outlining the case for keeping Biden in the way that she did is it was something more robust than we're riding with Biden because Biden rode with us. The concern about legal challenges and a general election that gets decided by the judiciary, federal judiciary that is dominated by Trump appointees, that's real concern. Yeah. That is something that we should genuinely be thinking about. And all of the lawyers should be putting their heads together. They should be mapping out scenarios, mapping out strategies. That's real. That is the kind of argument that you make to people if you don't think they're stupid. Now, I wish that maybe would have come out a week or two earlier, but it is what it is. It came out. She said it. I'm glad she said it. I hope that all of the best election lawyers in the country, the best constitutional lawyers in the country have their heads in the game and they're prepared for any frivolous legal challenges that the Republicans try to mount in the coming months. But the idea that we're riding with Biden and you fall in line because you vote Democratic or because you believe in civil rights or because you believe in robust federal institutions, that you don't get to have any questions, that is insulting and ridiculous. And if we really want to talk about insulting, I am insulted. Man, this is supposed to be about pro-Kamala. Don't make me go off. I was insulted by the way that Black congressional Democrats carried water for Joe Biden over the past 3 weeks. I was insulted by that. And not because they genuinely believed in Biden and wanted to stand beside him. That's one thing. But invoking racial identity in that way in order to coerce consent is so You used Black racial identity in the history of Black struggle in the United States to rally behind an 81-year-old in cognitive decline. That is wrong, you guys. It is wrong. And there's no way that there's no way that they did not have access to the mountain of reporting that has been done over the past 3 weeks. There is no way. There's no way that people on the Hill are not asking questions about why Joe Biden, the man who loves Capitol Hill, could not even be bothered to show up to make the case for himself in person. He sent representatives to the Hill. There's no way that you have not heard all of these stories about Biden trailing off, losing his train of thought, only being able to work between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. There's no way. So why? Why would you come out? Why would you come out and let Biden say, the donors and the elites, they've abandoned me. So you know who I'm going to be with? The Black people. Why would you let him do that? That has really been pissing me off because it confirms everybody's worst feelings, their worst instincts about the way that representative democracy works. Anyways, I just think I'm glad that we're on a new path I'm supposed to be talking about Kamala. I'm supposed to be talking about Kamala. I just think the way that people have been navigating this is so disgraceful. And I'm glad we're back on the right track. But man, I just can't believe it. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, I think what's even worse to my mind, what's even worse about the gaslighting and the horse trading and the politicking is you did all that to back a loser. You did all that and you didn't even win. You didn't even get the outcome that you were advocating for. Okay. But anyways, back to Kamala. I've been really astounded to see the people who apparently do politics for a living fuck up the politics of this so bad. We need to be soberly looking around to assess the political mood of the country. And the political mood of this country is not going to tolerate, quote unquote, elite Black people threatening to throw a tantrum if Kamala Harris is not the nominee. That's not where we are. That's not going to be effective. We are in an anti-identity politics, anti-DEI mood. And when you say she has to be the nominee because she is Black and a woman, again, you immediately put her on the defense. If we believe in Kamala, which I do, I'm a pro-Kamala person, then we should be advocating for her in a way that allows her to move from a position of strength. Also, VPs get challenged for the top of the ticket, like the presidential nominee all the time. Like, remember in 2000 was the first election that I really paid close attention to because I was a little baby political junkie. Bill Bradley challenged Al Gore. It's a very normal thing. And so I think it is really important and notable that all of these people are coming out to say it has to be Kamala, it's Kamala, it's Kamala. And the person who didn't come out to say that was Barack Obama. And I think that Barack Obama was acting and this is just conjecture, speculation, but it seems to me that by refusing to immediately say it's gotta be Kamala and saying, oh, it's an open convention, that does not undermine Kamala. It's the action of another shrewd political actor, right? Like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris are tight. They're very friendly. Certainly, he wants her to be the nominee. He also understands the kind of lightning rod figure that he is still in Democratic politics. It is so interesting to me that if you watched any of the Republican National Convention, I watched Donald Trump Jr. make a speech where he was introducing like J.D. Vance's wife and whatever. And he said something about who's running the country. Is it Jill? Is it Barack Obama? Is it Corn Pop? And I'm like, Barack Obama hasn't been president in 8 years. But when he said the name Barack Obama, the crowd erupted. The stadium erupted because Barack Obama still takes up so much space in the minds of the Trumpers. And so Barack Obama, being the very cautious, shrewd political actor that he is, does not want to immediately insert himself into pushing Kamala Harris in a way that could potentially distract from her having a very clear path to the nomination. So it's, open convention. And you know, George Clooney in his op-ed, which allegedly Barack Obama reviewed before it was published, George Clooney said, open convention. Her election win will boil down to her VP pick. Thank you. And so there is an idea that it's going to be too potentially damaging in this climate for all of the Black people to come in and like, she's Black and she's a woman. It's, you know, come on. Clearly, it is going to be Kamala, but on the pathway, you gotta emphasize Kamala Harris's competence and the efficiency with which her starting her campaign and having the best chance of winning the election in November, what that provides, the streamlining of simply moving all of the money that the Biden-Harris campaign has raised over to Kamala. That can be done really quickly. The Biden-Harris campaign has 1,200 staffers already. They can become Kamala staffers so quick, so easy. She should probably get different people to lead the campaign and come up with the strategy, but the on the ground, the vaunted ground game of Biden-Harris, all of those staffers, all of those field offices, the people who can knock on the doors immediately goes to Kamala Harris. We're in a great place. Also, Kamala Harris, okay, for making the efficiency argument, a great fundraiser. There's all of these conversations about, oh, Kamala is not the best politician. No, but people like her, incredibly well connected, and a great fundraiser. Tens of millions of dollars already has gone to Kamala Harris. That's great. Easy. She's not starting from zero. And she has also been a very visible, high-level public figure long enough where the Oppo research is going to do what it does. I'm going to be honest. I have been in the forums and stuff recently. I have seen stories about Kamala Harris that will certainly make the shade room in the next 4 months. But it's not going to completely derail her. It hasn't derailed her yet. It's not going to completely derail her. The opposition research is going to do what it does. She is she's a known unknown. Trying to pick somebody else and make sure they don't have any skeletons, that's going to be too risky. Like, these are good arguments. Good arguments that withstand critique and poking and prodding. Because descriptive representation is great, whatever, but like, can the candidate do it? The other thing that we've seen about Kamala Harris is like, she's been all over the place. She's been all over the place without Biden making the case. That's another tick in her favor. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard prosecute the case. Kamala needs to prosecute the case, or not Kamala, but like somebody has to be able to prosecute the case. Somebody has to prosecute the case against Donald Trump, prosecute the case, even before Kamala was the presumptive nominee. Well, guess what? We have a very established, esteemed prosecutor who can prosecute the case. Like, these are thoughtful, rigorous, substantive arguments in Kamala's favor. Bro, I've been, do I want to say this? Give me 1 second to think about. Would my boyfriend tell me not to say this out loud? Okay. Sometimes when I engage with political commentary and they rely on arguments that strike me as very facile and superficial, arguments that boil down to identity, it makes me feel like they're doing it because they don't have the capacity to make different arguments. And I'm not anti-identity politics. I'm anti-frivolous identity politics. I'm anti the cynical deployment of identity in pursuit of personal gain. I'm anti that. But look, I'm a Black feminist. I can't be anti-identity politics. But there are so many other substantive, thoughtful arguments. You got to make those too. Whew. Sorry. My frustration with purported progressives in their electoral fetishism. For example, you're full-throatedly pro-Kamala. What do you do before, after November 8th? Lemon character offering a gift to baby Lemon. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. I also think that we have to be making a case for how Kamala Harris is going to be an effective champion for legislation that makes the United States safer, more stable, more prosperous. How is she going to do that? Now, she hasn't laid out her legislative agenda. But certainly we should be having that conversation now. I saw a release from the White House from early June 11th, 2024, that was the vice president is working with the CFPB to figure out how to eliminate medical debt from people's credit scores. Love that. Like, of course, that's like a small piece, but like, that's I love that. Why are people's credit scores tanking because they got sick? That doesn't make any sense. Like, those are good, robust arguments that can win an election that's going to come down to 5 states. I really said on here, you're not gonna fuck my man. Why did I say that? Why did I say you're not gonna beat me up? I mean, you're not. Because I don't fight. Nobody's gonna beat me up because I've never been in a fight. It's never gonna happen. Anyways, I think that as we are diligently on this pro-Kamala Harris path, to not get stuck in the identity black hole. Unless you are explicitly talking about how her identity as a Black and Asian woman impacts the way that she interacts with public policy. So over the past few months, Kamala Harris has been a great advocate of abortion rights. And man, I was just thinking like how, of course, there are so many other things that the American people care about and are voting on, right? Immigration and the top two are immigration and the economy. But like really think about how striking it will be visually to have a presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, in Michigan stumping with Gretchen Whitmer. And Gretchen Whitmer very famously shared in front of the house in Michigan her abortion story. That's that's compelling politics to me. But you know, it is what it is. I am anti-prison, but I have accepted that the non-carceral girls have lost the debate for the time being. And for me, like, that's like a real thing about my engagement with Kamala Harris is, ooh, if we want to get into that, is Kamala Harris a progressive prosecutor? Look, the answer is no, she was not a progressive prosecutor. But I'm invested in winning an election. I think that if you are going to engage with electoral politics, you need to engage to win. And winning requires strategy. Winning requires thoughtful, effective messaging. It requires being able to tap in and understand the political mood of the United States. And right now, the political mood of the United States is not the progressive prosecutor mood. It's not even the political mood in San Francisco, where Kamala Harris was district attorney. Because in 2022, Chesa Boudin, the progressive prosecutor, the actually progressive prosecutor, was recalled. Oh, people say, oh, San Francisco is so liberal. Okay, well, London breed, you know, like it's not giving what you think it's giving. So Kamala is in a very strong position now to not try to be something that she never was. She doesn't have to make gestures, you know, broad, vague gestures towards justice the way that she would have in the 2020 campaign. She can say, I was a prosecutor. I believe in being smart on crime, and that means you gotta lock people the fuck up sometimes. Look, that's what the people want. The girls are dying for a cop. They're dying for a cop in the White House. You be the best fucking cop you can be, Kamala. You know, it doesn't matter if you pull up the crime statistics and say crime in all of the big cities is, violent crime in all of the big cities is down. It doesn't matter. People don't want to hear that. They want people, the United States is an incredibly carceral, punitive country. They want people to be locked the fuck up. And, you know, those of us who disagree with that mission, for right now, we've lost the debate. Kamala versus Trump, the prosecutor versus the felon. Okay, can we talk about this? I think that we should talk about this. So in 2020, crime did spike in a lot of big cities. Violent crime did spike in big cities across the country. That is true. But in 2021, 2022, 2023, the recording crime data, crime is down across the country. Across the country. And if you zoom out more than 5 years, 10 years, the violent crime data goes like this. It's just not true that we are experiencing a time of any kind of unprecedented or exceptional crime. It's just not true. But I understand that in the United States, people want to feel safe. And there's nothing that anybody can say if you don't feel safe. We need Kamala versus Trump debate. I don't know. I think right now Trump is saying that he doesn't want to agree to a debate because she's not the official nominee. So that's that. Tulsi bodied her on her attorney record based on systemic discrimination. TMR, Breaking Points et al. Had some concerns if Kamala doesn't prep for that, which was her reputation while campaigning. I believe that after 4 years and a marked improvement with regard to the way that she comports herself in public and the way that she articulates ideas, that Kamala Harris will be ready to address. But let me also say, and this is why I don't want to go back and forth with the man yelling at me from his car, it is not in Kamala Harris's best interest to get into relitigating her prosecutorial record. The last thing that people who want Kamala Harris to win in November should be doing is investing themselves in going line by line through Kamala's actions as a district attorney or an attorney general. That's not what you want to do. You can tout all of the reforms, the quote unquote progressive reforms that she made. I think it is actually pretty notable that early on when she was a district attorney, she was against the death penalty. Now, did that sustain itself? No, it did not. But she was again, she did take a stand early on against the death penalty. That's a thing. The thing is, that for every quote unquote progressive reform that you're trying to argue hard against, people can come back with 2 or 3 other things that are not progressive. That people would be like, huh? Oh. So, Kimberly, the amateur crisis comms manager, would say, don't get into that. You did what you did. You were a prosecutor. It's your responsibility to uphold rule of law, and you did it. That was your job. And move on. Don't put her in the position or don't advocate for her to be in a position where she has to justify. Again, the great opportunity of having Kamala is because she is a known unknown, she gets to redefine herself because she has been relatively sidelined within the Biden administration. She gets to come out forcefully and say, you think you know, but you have no idea. You have drawn all of these erroneous conclusions about the work that I do or what I represent because you watch Fox News all day, but this is actually it. And the United States is a country that, quote unquote, values the rule of law. And we cannot afford to have a vulgar felon in the White House. We cannot do that. You love America? You should love America enough to know how much it erodes the public perception of this country and trust in our institutions to have a convicted criminal in the White House. That is the Kamala Harris messaging around her record. I am not a criminal. I hate crime. I hope we are, it's been 2 hours. I hope we are prepped for the right to use her to further the divide between Black women and Black men online. They are strategic. They will use her against Black men. Oh, God. Oh, the honest, okay. Okay, look, I'm just going to say how I really feel. If you watch the Republican National Convention the way that I did, well, I watched the J.D. Vance night and I watched the Donald Trump night. It is clear from J.D. Vance's speech that he is making a really intentional effort to bring into the Republican Party men of color Black and brown men who have been economically disenfranchised and who have socially conservative values, but who also have an anti-establishment orientation. And if you read, I'm going to drop the name of another liberal elite publication. The Atlantic, there is an article by Tim Alberta, and he interviews the campaign managers, the campaign strategists for the Trump campaign. And they explicitly say that because they are losing Karens, which is the educated white women, that they are going to pick up Enriques and Jamals, which is Latino men and Black men. Literally. It's literally in print in The Atlantic. The Trump people are saying this. They are making a beeline toward Black and Latino men. Now, do we know if that is going to be effective? Do we know if that's going to materialize into electoral gains? Well, it did work in Florida. But is that going to work nationally? We don't know yet because those people are also low propensity voters, but they're already doing it. That's already the strategy. They've already said it. So I think, yes, the Harris campaign should be really prepared for that. And I did hear an interview, like a little snippet from Harris maybe a couple of months ago when she said that somebody asked her about Black men or whatever, and she's like gave a great answer. And actually this might have been the time when I was like, oh, Kamala's getting better at this. Because somebody asked her about Black men and electoral politics, and she said, we have to earn their vote. That was a good answer. Do y'all remember what interview I'm talking about where she said, no, there can't be an expectation that Black men are just going to vote for us because they're Black men. We have to earn their vote. I said, oh, so smart. Yeah, you clearly are plugged in to the conversations. but like we are actually moving. Okay. The Republican Party's theory of the case is that we are moving toward an electoral landscape where the Black and Latino men are going to more decisively break away from the Republican Party, that they're actually going to be like real voters instead of like low propensity voters, and that a populist economic message wedded to social conservatism is the way that you bring those quote unquote Enriquez and Jamal into the quote unquote big tent of the Republican Party. Wasn't it so fascinating during the Republican National Convention when J.D. Vance said that the Republican Party is a big tent? What is going on? That was nuts. Yeah. But of course, right? And by the way, like, so this is like a risky strategy. Do we really want to go like, since I haven't been on here in a week, I guess I can go really long today and then I'll do like shorter streams later on in the week. The reason why people are feeling like the Republican, you know, the Trump strategist theory of the case is a risky one is because the Karens vote. The college educated people vote. The old people vote. Black women vote. Black and Latino men So the question is, when they're trying to do a different kind of outreach, you know, apparently they're not trying to do the traditional ground game or whatever. Is that going to be enough to get a group or groups of people who don't have, I want to say they don't have like, I want to say culture of voting, but they don't have like, it's not an imperative, you know what I mean? Like as a Black woman, you get it drilled into your mind. It's deeply inculcated into your psyche that voting is a responsibility that you have for yourself and for your community and for everybody who came before. For your great, great, great enslaved grandmother, you are voting. I'm not joking. That's not a joke. That's like a real thing. For people who have not internalized the same messaging, do you want to hinge your electoral strategy on those people? That's the question. We don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, y'all are saying incendiary things. Okay, somebody's saying the Karens vote, but their vote can easily be split. Young white woman voted for Hillary, old white woman didn't. That's why she lost. Okay, so really, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, I actually think that so the divide, and I don't really think it's appropriate for us to go back to 2016 because that was such a unique case. But if we want to do that, it's just, I don't think it is at all appropriate to compare 2016 to 2024. But really the electoral divide is between young and old white women, but it's also between married and unmarried white women. That was also the electoral divide. And the reason why I think we should not keep comparing 2016 to 2024 is because the landscape and the divide between young and old white women has moved further, and the divide between young and old white women and the divide between married and unmarried, like just like the demographic makeup, has moved further toward a direction that benefits Democrats. Single women vote Democratic. Shout out to population collapse, right? Like, shout out to the decline of marriage among educated adults, right? Like single women are more likely to vote Democratic than married women. And as we know, as all of the reporting has told us, there's far more unmarried women now than there were 8 years ago, almost a decade ago. Educated women vote Democratic. As we know, there's for every one man who gets a college degree now, 2 women get college degrees. So the way that the population of the United States is shifting, Democrats honestly should not lose elections. Like, that's the thing. I think that is what is so horrifying, or that was what was so horrifying about seeing Biden be consistently behind in polls. Like, Democrats should not lose elections. There are so many structural advantages, like, in the population that, like, benefit. Certainly not national elections. And this is why they're trying to force more women to marry, because married women tend to go conservative. Some white women will vote for Kamala, for sure. I wonder how married white women are feeling about the possibility of their right to divorce being taken away. Oh, yeah. In several states, those with criminal records have the right to vote taken away from them due to the racist nature of the criminal justice system. Many Black and Latino men cannot vote. That is true. Okay. Now, I will say I have many critiques of the Democratic Party. I would literally never vote for a Republican. I can't even imagine it. I honestly can't imagine it. I mean, certainly not. I mean, maybe. I mean, I live in Dallas, where the Black mayor of Dallas switched from Democrat to Republican, and he spoke at the Republican National Convention. Do you think I would ever vote for that man again? No. I'm sorry. The fact that do I feel like the city of Dallas has substantively changed since he switched from Democrat to Republican? No. But the fact that you took your happy self up to Milwaukee and wanted to hang out with the Trumpers means I will never vote for you ever again. Like, I will never. Whew. Anyways, I'm actually losing my voice now. I gotta go. I will see you guys next time. I hope that next time I will have myself together and we can discuss why that young member of the K-Hive who went viral yelling at me from the front seat of his car, why it is incorrect to describe Kamala Harris as a quote-unquote progressive prosecutor, and why he was wrong in a way that not only misrepresents her prosecutorial record, but wrong in a way that harms her chances of winning Democratic-leaning voters in swing states. So y'all keep me lifted, pray that I can keep my stuff together and that we can get it together for next time so I can do a deep dive on that. I think I'm done. Oh, I forgot. I didn't even get to this slide where y'all can see your comments on screen. Bro, I am defending the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee. And that's it. And we have to make some really tough choices. Okay, here's my thing. We'll end on this. I saw somebody yesterday comment on my post of me saying that I am supporting Kamala Harris because she is the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, and she is the only way that Donald Trump will not be president of the United States and get to completely transform the government and install more radical, anti-constitution, authoritarian-oriented judges. Okay? And somebody said under there, well, I'm not going to vote. I hope Trump wins. So hopefully that brings about a revolution and people will feel inspired to do something radical the next time. You guys, I understand the impulse to say that. I get why people feel that way. I really do. I do think that even the idea of accelerationism is dumb as fuck, but I get why people are saying, I don't want to vote for the centrist. I don't want to vote for the cop. I don't want to vote for the prosecutor. Let's get Donald Trump in again. And hopefully people will realize that it's so bad that we have to go radical. My question is, did that happen in 2020? It didn't. It didn't. What happened is we got 4 years of Donald Trump and he got to install his anti-constitution judges with authoritarian impulses, and they eliminated affirmative action in higher education, and they overturned Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and they overturned Chevron, and they said that the lower courts get to make a decision about presidential immunity, right? So we got to do all of that stuff in the judiciary. That's going to result in generations of misery. Like the misery that is going to come from overturning Roe, it's generations. The setbacks that are going to come from a higher education system that systematically disadvantages Black people, and ultimately what we're actually really going toward is the complete elimination of racial considerations in any contract, employment contracts, internships, no employee resource groups, no federal contracts for minority contract, like, okay. It's gonna take generations. If we ever get those rights back, it will be generations down the line, okay? So generations of misery. In addition to that, we also have the intentional decimation of these federal agencies that already had their power constrained because they've been slowly chipped away, like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, slowly chipped away. All of this deregulation slowly chipped away in their power to make rules and enforce rules, slowly chipped away. The Department of the Interior chipped away. We can't protect the lands of the, okay? But then that stuff becomes the norm. And then future presidents don't feel any desire because they like all of the power that gets imbued into the centralized presidency, like what the conservatives call the Unitarian executive. They like all the power that gets consolidated into the executive branch, and the new presidents don't want to give that up. But also, the other thing that happens after you elect a chaos president and have 4 years of chaos is people do not, if we look at history, they don't say, oh, now we have to go radical democratic socialist, radical democratic socialism. They say, we need a safe man. We need a safe, stable father who is going to take care of the country. After all of that chaos, we need somebody who's just going to not rock the boat. And that's how we get Joe Biden. Now, to Biden's credit, he was, I know we want to quibble about whether or not Biden was progressive. Girl, look at the fact sheets that the White House has provided. I think that, let me just say this. Unfortunately, because of Joe Biden's current condition, he has not been able to effectively advocate for all of the policy that has been passed and the effects and impacts of that policy. He has not been able to effectively use the bully pulpit to say, look at all of this stuff that I have done and look at how it impacts your life. It is no longer legal to have to sign a non-compete clause. You no longer have to go to forced arbitration if you have been sexually assaulted at your job. You can go to trial, right? But he don't have the ability to do that. He hasn't done it. He hasn't been out there. It is what it is. It's fine. It's his fault. It's his fault. It's their fault, okay? But people after chaos don't want to do, they want to do safe. They want to do a guarantee. They want to do a known quantity. They want to do familiar. We do not live in a country where people have revolutionary impulses for all kinds of reasons. And so if you are betting on a second Trump term to bring about the kind of progressive, leftist, quote unquote, radical revolutionary change in the institutions of American government that you deeply desire, you should not be betting on that. I'm not trying to cape for electoral politics or Democrats because I think the Democratic Party is pathetic. I really do. We've already gone over that. I'm simply saying, I'm trying to be real with y'all. I'm trying to be real with y'all about where we are. We are in a point where all of that economic populism shit that J.D. Vance was saying, advocating at the Republican National, that's not real. That's not a real thing. That's not coming. To my mind, the economic populism stuff is a smokescreen to get to a national abortion ban and outlawing trans health care. I just think that I get people who are beaten down by the idea of voting for the lesser of two evils. I get it. I do. But I one time Angela Davis said, revolutionaries must also be realists. And the reality of the situation, it's real bad. The outlook is really, really bad. And I heard somebody say one time, like, is voting in a Democratic administration, is that going to get you the radical change, the progressive change that you deeply desire and need? No, but it's going to buy you some time. It's going to buy you some time to get your shit together and organize for the things that you deeply desire and need. Bro, as I mentioned earlier, think about all of the die-hard Trumpers. The die-hard Trumpers who believe full sail wholeheartedly in the words of Donald Trump, who believed him about COVID and are dead. Millions of people dead. Anyways, y'all go ahead and like the live before you go. I will see you guys next time. Bye.